Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Well, good Sunday evening, everybody. It's great to be back as we do this every Sunday night. It's the RTI Lowdown. It's Chris Lowe. I'm with a special guest tonight, Bob Baskerville, my normal co-host. I think he's vacationing in the Caribbean or somewhere, or maybe he's fishing, deep sea fishing off the Gulf of Mexico, knowing Bob, but I jest. But it sure is good to have Ryan Schumpert with us. You read Ryan's excellent work every day right here on Rocky Top Insider. Ryan, around that football program, basketball program, every day knows it inside and out. And if you got to pull someone out of the bullpen, Ryan, you're the Mariano Rivera of RTI Lowdown. How about that?
That's a pretty good compliment. But yeah, I appreciate the kind words and for having me on to keep Bob's seat warm for him as he's out on the bye week.
Yeah, well, Bob will be back. And as I said, we do this every Sunday night, the RTI Lowdown. You can access us on Rocky Top Insider, the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, or anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Be sure to subscribe and link, again, the RTI Lowdown on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube. And it's your show, the show you need to be listening to every Sunday night. And we do all things Tennessee, all things SEC, and I hope to have a special guest tonight. Ryan, Dale Jones, who was in school with me in the 80s, and part of what I think is as beloved a Tennessee football team as you're going to find over the last 50 years, and that's that 1985 SEC championship team, which is being honored this coming Saturday, the 40th anniversary. I talked to Dale earlier, still keep in touch with a lot of those guys, Todd Kerr, Kelly Ziegler, Bruce Wilkerson, and they're looking forward to being back on campus this Saturday for Tennessee, Arkansas, as they're doing something for that team. Also honoring the 90 team, the 90 SEC championship team. This hard to believe, the 35th anniversary of that championship team. Both those teams coached by the late John Majors. Ryan, let's get to the Arkansas and Tennessee this weekend. Tennessee had a break this week. Arkansas had a break. As you come out of September, and again, you're around this team all the time, what was your sort of vibe with this football team as they exited September, now as they dive into October?
I think it's a confident bunch, and I think there was so much uncertainty around this team after an offseason that you go back to Jermon McCoy in January, and then obviously the stuff with Nico and bringing Joey in the spring, and then Boo Carter in the summer. It just felt like a lot of drama that led to a lot of uncertainty at some of the spots. You maybe felt like there were certainty when you exited that Ohio State game or exited the portal period ending. But I think it's a team that's found its offensive identity that, frankly, it just didn't really, it didn't have, I guess it found its identity last year in Dylan Sampson, but certainly the explosiveness was gone. And they found that, and this defense isn't as good as it was a year ago, isn't as good as I think people expected. So I think that's where it's at. There's no reason to think that this offense isn't going to continue to play really well and be right around one of the 10 best in the country. And as Tennessee, to me, I think the question is, as Tennessee gets a little bit more healthy on the defensive end, how much better can they get on that side of football to become a little bit more complete football team?
So, Ryan, do you think this team is more equipped to win those 40 to 30 something type games, those games where both teams are scoring? Now, we've seen them play to some degree 2 of those games. They lost one in overtime to Georgia. They won the other in overtime against Mississippi State 2 weeks ago. And I'm betting they're going to have at least one more of those kind of games, maybe 2 more, where you're going to have to score upper 30s or in the 40s to win. How much more equipped is this team to win those kind of games than last year? And why do you think that is the case, if so?
Yeah, it's night and day. And to your point, to me, it feels like one Saturday. They're probably going to need to at least score in the 30s if they're going to win, if not into the 40s. Yeah, I think Josh Heupel would talk all last year, and look, a lot of it was just coach speak about the passing game issues and say some of it's receiver, some of it's pass protection, some of it's quarterback. I think they're better at all 3 spots. Offensive line, to me, there was a lot of optimism going into the season that this was going to be a better group than it was a year ago. And I think they've lived up to it. I think it'll be curious to see how they shuffle some pieces with David Sanders back, and if there is maybe another gear for that group. And then look, Joey just seems to have a much better grasp of what Josh Heupel wants to do, and he's just a lot more comfortable. It's not that he's certainly not more talented than Nico. It's not that he has that Hendon Hooker level accuracy, but he just seems pretty unflappable and confident in himself, and is going to make those tough throws. And look, it helps that you have a guy like Chris Brazzell that's making a lot of contested catches, and Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley haven't just been dominant, but I think they've been, outside of a couple of drops from really both of them, but especially Matthews, about as steady as you could have hoped they were going to be for 2 second-year guys. So I think it's a collection of those things, but certainly it's just a passing game that has a juice that it certainly didn't have last year and really hasn't had either of the last 2 seasons.
I think we all forget, and I'm included in that group, that Joey Aguilar had about 3 months, maybe a little bit more than 3 months, when he got on campus to learn this offense, to acclimate himself to his teammates, just to sort of know the ropes of the program. And they play the last day of August, and that to me, of all the things he's done well, is the most impressive, that he has had such little time to get to this point. And I think, and you've sort of seen this, I think he will get better and better. And not that they have not given him the whole playbook, but I think this staff, certainly Josh Heupel, the play caller, will feel better about what kind of freedom and what kind of license they give him going forward, Ryan, with the way he's protected the football for the most part and been able to throw the football down the field and find open receivers. That's the thing. In today's game more than ever, when things break down, you feel the pressure. You got to be able to have that feel to break away, but still know where guys are down the field. And he's done that. He's been terrific at that all season long. And that's why when I look at this offense, to your point a minute ago, I do think they have another level that they can get to. And to be honest, we're probably going to need to get to.
Yeah, for sure. Your initial point is dead on the money. I mean, it's something you don't think about now, but you were talking about him going back to when he first committed, and there was the UCLA quarter system, and is he going to be able to get here until June, and how is all this going to work? And I'm sure kind of like you said, the full playbook wasn't open against Syracuse, but from the jump, he's been comfortable in the offense. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway from the Syracuse game, is that he looked like a player that had played in was maybe entering a second year in Josh Heupel's system, not a guy that had been there for 3 months. And another thing, you mentioned the negative plays and turnovers, but the sacks he takes too. I like to call them Hendon Hooker sacks. It's if he is taking a sack, and there hasn't been many of them, it's 2-3 yard losses. They're not plays that just derail drives. So I think, the passing game, it's about as good as anyone could have realistically hoped for. To me, the big question I have is about the running offense. How much you saw them struggle to run the ball against Georgia until the end of the game. And I don't think, at least myself, I didn't balk at that a ton, because Tennessee, a lot of people struggled to run the football against Georgia. Saw it again against Mississippi State. That was, to me, a lot more surprising, though I do think Mississippi State was selling out to stop the run a lot in that game. To me, it felt like they wanted to make Joey Aguilar make plays through the air to beat them. Can Tennessee – doesn't have to look like – it's not going to look like it did last year, because they're just not going to run the ball as much. But can they have a little bit more consistency running the football to set up some of that play action stuff down the field? And can they run the ball well in short yardage situations, not just against Arkansas, this week? Can they do that against Alabama? Can they do that against Oklahoma? Can they do that against Florida? Because those are the consistent details. Yeah, add it to running into red zone too. Those are going to be the things that can be the difference in some of these high scoring shootout type games.
I've never seen a team win an SEC title. I say never. I don't remember one in my time that was not able to run the football pretty well. I mean, I don't mean you got to run for 230 yards every game, but certainly some of the situations you just mentioned, running the football off the goal line, finishing games, running the football, running third and short, fourth and short yard situations, down in the red zone, those times that you have to be able to run the football. When the other team knows you're going to run it, is when, that typically separates teams that play for titles and don't. That had been able to stop the run, quite frankly. And that's where I agree with you, Ryan. Tennessee's got to get better there. And I won't say make more of a commitment to run the football, but just make that be a bigger part of what they do. And the thing about that is, if you go back to Josh Heupel's offenses, back when he was at UCF, when he was calling plays at Missouri, the one constant with his offenses is he's always running the football. He's committed to run the football. I know there's all these narratives out there about his offense being gimmicky or they spread you out. No, if you really do your homework, they've always run the ball. Back when Golis was here, even back before that, I talked to Jeff Levy. Levy was with Josh when they were at UCF, and that was just something that was ingrained in what they do. So I do think, yes, I think if you start looking at where this team can get better, where it needs to get better, and you're dead on, man. Arkansas is not any good at all on defense. I mean, I don't care if they completely transform in a week off under Bobby Petrino, who takes over as their interim head coach. They just have not been competitive on defense. So I'd be very surprised if Tennessee doesn't run the ball with success against the Hogs. But the real tests come later in the year, against Alabama, against Oklahoma, against Florida, against Vanderbilt. Those teams that have been pretty hard for the most part to run the football on this year. So Tennessee going to get tested plenty in that area as they go forward, Ryan. I want to ask you this too. You mentioned this right off the top, Tennessee getting healthy. You're right. They will, looks like, get one guy back on defense that should help a lot. David Hobbs, I think, will be available, be able to get some snaps on defense. And they really missed he and Moy both against Georgia. The defensive tackles just had to play way too many snaps in that game. And you could sort of tell that in the fourth quarter. So now all of a sudden you got Moy and you got Hobbs against Arkansas this weekend. That makes a big difference. I do not believe or expect Tennessee to get Jamad McCoy back at corner. He still hasn't practiced. I know he's working hard to get back. He wants to get back. I just don't know, Ryan, how realistic it is that he's back this week against the Hogs.
Yeah, I think, it's twofold where defense tackle has just been a position as a whole. Tennessee need to get healthy, and because of the bodies, and that was a drum I was banging on before Hobbs got hurt in fall camp. The depth there was going to be a question. So you feel better about Nathan Robinson. You feel better about Isaiah Campbell if you're asking him to play 8 to 12 snaps a game. So I think that's big. I think Dominic Bailey's been an unsung hero of this team early in the season with what he's been able to do to slide inside. And then, Arkansas obviously throws the ball really well, so you'd love to have McCoy back this week. But Alabama feels like the one with as good as a 1-2, if not a 1-2-3 at receiver in the SEC, if not the conference. That's the game that you would love to have him back by. And certainly it just gives a different look to Tennessee's defense if he's even 85% of the guy he was last year, because Colton Hood, I think, there was such positive buzz around him, but I think he's been better than anyone expected. And if you go from Ty Redmond, who's done a good job as a true freshman, I think he's going to be a really good player in time, but he's not Jamad McCoy. So, that just to me changes the dynamic. Back to my original point of where this team's at, how much better can they get defensively? That's, as much as anything. It's maybe not as pressing as the defensive tackle spot is because they have gotten gashed at times on the ground. But I think that just changes so much of what Tim Banks can do when you have 2 potential first-round draft picks at your 2 corner spots.
They had to lean so hard on the defense last year. Tennessee did. And I listen, I give Banks and that staff and those guys credit because they came through. Now I know the other side of that as well. They didn't play well against Georgia. They didn't play well against Ohio State, the best teams on their schedule. And that's true. It's fair. It's fair criticism. But I don't think even coming into this season that Josh Heupel felt like they would have to lean as hard, nor did he want to have to lean as hard on that defense, which makes their ability to strike down the field, Brazel being that guy that has sort of, been that big play threat for him. And I think it's one of those things where it helps not put so much pressure on your defense. And, that'll be really critical because they're going to play now 4 games in 4 weeks in October, 2 at home, 2 on the road. So we find out a lot more about that. I think we got Dale Jones with us here in studio. Dale doesn't really need an introduction. All I can say is he's just like me. He's old. We both were in school in the 80s. But Dale, man, we really appreciate you joining us tonight on the RTI Lowdown. And I have a hard time believing, my friend, it's been 40 years since that magical 1985 season.
That seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
A long time ago.
40 years. Wow.
Yeah. How excited are you to get to campus this weekend?
Well, I can't.
Your teammates.
Oh, I can't wait, to see a bunch of old teammates. Being in the coaching world, I didn't have an opportunity to go back that often. So it's going to be special to go back and see all my friends, teammates.
Dale, when you think back, and I know, again, you're a coach and having been around coaches my whole life, you guys are what's right in front of you. You don't have a lot of time to reminisce. But now that you are retired, you're living up there in Boone, North Carolina, when you think of that team, what you guys overcame, the adversity, losing T-Rob, and just getting better and better as the season went on, what are the 2 or 3 moments of that season that just sort of jump out at you?
Well, I think, the number one, losing Tony in the Alabama game, that was tough. We were able to hold on and win that. Then, Darryl came in, and the next week, I think we played Georgia Tech, and we play them, and, the offense, they kind of keep it vanilla, and we win 6-3 or something like that. So it was, so those were two of the big things. And then I think where we really become a outstanding group was when we lost to Florida, or only lost, we went to Florida and we lost to those guys. And I think that made us what we were and what we become. And I think, sometimes you learn great lessons when you lose. And I think that's when we really turned it around.
Dale, Ryan here. I appreciate you joining us. And I'm a younger guy, just 26, so certainly don't remember that season. But I didn't, last year, Tennessee 2024, they played Florida and Alabama back-to-back, and I probably sat on our RTI podcast and talked about how I'm not sure that's ever happened. Well, looking at it this week, that you guys played that game back-to-back, and you were talking about it just right then. What was that? What did that stretch mean for a season? To lose that Florida game, to come back the next week in a rivalry game, Tony to get hurt, and find a way to win. How much did that set the stage for what was to come the last month and a half and then into the Sugar Bowl?
Well, I think that, we knew, of course, Florida was ineligible because they got in some trouble with the NCAA. I think it was like 100 violations. So, but they were good. Let me tell you, they were outstanding. And we knew, it would come down to the Alabama game. And if we would go there and play well and, we're able to win that, then it was up to us. We controlled our destiny. And I think that's what was special about that team. I think the last 3 or 4 games, we played outstanding. I don't know if anybody even scored. So it was definitely, just a credible run. And, we stuck together when we had, we lost Tony, and just to find a way to battle and just to hold on and become a great team.
Dale, I think of that Bama game, and we were talking earlier. Most people hear Bama, Tennessee. Now they think in Tuscaloosa. In those days, you guys played at Legion Field in Birmingham, and I can remember how hot it was and the artificial turf. And I'm sitting, I don't know, 12 rows from the field, but I still see that play. And I know you've only been asked about it probably about 1,500 times in your life. Of course, Shula's left-handed. He's rolling that way. What were you reading on that play? Did you sort of see what was coming? Take us back through that play.
Well, so when the play started, I knew something was up. Something just, I don't know, his instincts, intuition. I knew something was going on. And so when the ball snapped, they kind of let me go. They kind of blocked and they let me go. So I knew that, it was something different than what we've seen on film. So at that time, I saw the back leave. So I knew that it was going to be a swing pass to him. And then it was everything went slow motion. It was crazy. It went slow motion. And as the play went, I had to decide how I was going to play it. And so it was just an amazing thing. And just like I'd lived it before, and it slowed down, and able to tip the pass, and then was able to catch the ball before it hit the ground. It was a little boy dream living in Tennessee, growing up, making the play. So it was a great time for me.
No way you're going to let that ball slip through your fingers either, right, Dale?
No, I played tight end when I was in high school. I had pretty good hands.
You told me several years ago a great story about that. You coaching up there in App State and got to play some golf. You got to play some golf. I think this is right. One year with Mike Shula, and his dad, Hall of Famer Don Shula, played with you guys. Take it from there. How did Mike introduce you to his dad?
Well, so we played at one of the clubs here. So we got there, and so me and Mike was talking, and his dad came up, and he said, "Dad, I want to introduce you to Dale Jones. This is the guy I made famous in Tennessee." So that's pretty neat.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Dale, it kind of, Chris said it, the lead-in before you came on. To me, the old teams I hear talked about, obviously 98, and then just right after that, it's another 1985 team. Did you guys have that feeling at the time, or after y'all beat Miami? Did it set in then how historical of a Tennessee football team that was? And I guess if not, when did that sink in for you?
Well, I think just really when you look at how things, how Tennessee got better, we were the starting point. I think that, we hadn't won a championship in, 15, 16 years. So it was special. And, just the fact that we had so many guys that were just played better than they were. And we knew that helped us in recruiting, and we started getting better and better. And I just think it was a team that kind of brought Tennessee back from where we were just we'd win 8 or 10, but this took us to where we're winning championships.
And I can speak for it because I was there. That team galvanized not only the football program, but the university, the community, the state. That was pre-internet, pre-social media. You actually picked up the newspaper the next morning, read about the games in the newspaper. And Dale, a lot of people don't realize this. Not many games were on TV back then. Very few of them were. And of course, the great John Ward was our eyes and ears. But that team, in so many ways, and I was looking this up today, that was the first time in almost 50 years that Tennessee had won an SEC title and then followed it up with a bowl win, going back to, I think, 38, which puts in perspective just what that team meant. And Dale's a little modest. I'll say it for him. There's no question that team and that championship paved the way for the success Tennessee had in the 90s. Listen, someone who's been around the program for 40-plus years, I can promise you that was the case, Dale. And I want to take you to Louisiana, the Sugar Bowl. And I was joking with you, I still hear the roar of that Sugar Bowl crowd in my ears 40 years later. But for you guys to go in there, and you were so well prepared, Coach Donahue, I think you guys were a step ahead of everything Miami did that night. They had, I don't know how many first-round picks on that team, but after they scored first, you guys dominated the football game. And what do you remember most about that game? And they had the Army fatigues and they got off the plane and they were talking trash, but you guys were a pretty confident team going in, weren't you?
Well, I think that, we knew we had a chance. There was a couple things that I think that kind of worked in our favor. Was definitely the fans. The fans were there. It was Tennessee all the way. And that was one thing. And, just taking a trip from the bus out to get from the hotel to the bus was amazing. The fans they were everywhere. And so they made you, they made you feel special. And then, they would have been, Miami would have been national champions if Oklahoma lost that day, if they beat us. And Oklahoma lost. And I think that, they wasn't worried so much about us as they were worried about what was going on in the other games. And, I don't want to take anything away from us. We were well prepared. We came to win, and, they came to play. And I think that just says a lot about that team in general. We played to win, and we didn't just go play. So I think that was, one of the, as I look back at it, one of the most important things was just what a great group of players, teammates, and, just everything, the fans, everything.
Dale, I don't know if you've ever watched the U 30 for 30 ESPN has. My dad always likes to joke watching that for some reason they didn't show the 1986 Sugar Bowl in that documentary. It's right there in the middle of the run, but for some reason it didn't get any love in the doc.
Well, it didn't fit the narrative.
That's right.
Dale, going back to that game, and I remember your colleague there at linebacker, Kelly Ziegler, we've talked a lot about this and laughed a lot that sometimes when you guys would be out, maybe late one night, always at the library, right down the strip, never out, but somewhere at the library. As you come back to Gibbs Hall, that Coach Donahue's light would be burning bright there in his office. But just his ability that year to put the pieces together on that defense, and certainly as you guys went into that game, playing for a guy like that, how memorable was that?
Well, I think the great story behind Coach Donahue was that his love for the game. He never quit. He drove you to be the best, and I think that what was so great about it, especially in the Miami game, but it really was all the games, was his game plans. So his game plans was a step ahead of what everybody else was doing at that time. We came in with two calls every time that he motioned or he signaled something in. It was two calls, and then the players, the linebackers, we would make the call which one we would play, and really one was really set for the defense to stop the run, and one was set for the defense to stop the pass. And I think that's you look at Coach Donahue, and what a just incredible coordinator he was, but he gave us every opportunity to win, and I thank him so much for that.
That's a great segue, and I know Coach Major is no longer with us either, but playing for somebody, Dale, that it meant so much to him to coach at Tennessee. He'd played at Tennessee, won the orange jersey just like you guys did. But as you look back on that time with him, and certainly that was the run in '85 that started. We talked about that. How special was that to play for him at a time when the program was really just starting to take off again?
Well, I think that, playing for Johnny Majors, that was, at the time, that was extremely an honor to have that opportunity. Not just play for Tennessee, but to play for him. One thing about Coach Majors, if he said something was orange and it was red, it was orange. Let me tell you, he never, and then if you saw him, 3 weeks later, it was still the same. So he was so consistent. And, I think that's one of the things that, that's definitely what I always remember him for. Just, he was always fighting for us, and he was always consistent.
Yeah, and if he ever referred to you as young man, you knew you had arrived. in
Yeah.
this camp.
I got called a lot of different things.
Well, Dale, man, it's been great. And gosh, we could do this for 20 more minutes, but just thanks for your time. And that, again, from having been there with you guys during that time, it's just hard to explain what a magical time that was on campus that fall, all the way up through the Sugar Bowl there in New Orleans. I don't think I slept for 3 days. I think I found a mattress somewhere on Bourbon Street leading up to that game. But man, what an awesome time. Too bad with your reunion this Friday that the old Ivies is no longer there on Lake Avenue. That'd be the perfect place to have it.
Well, it would be, but I'm sure they got some place will be a good place for it.
Listen, man, hey, have a good night. Great trip. Have a great trip here to Knoxville this weekend, and we sure do appreciate it, Dale.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you guys for thinking about the old past players. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Appreciate it, Dale.
That's the great Dale Jones, who one of the heartbeats of that '85 team, and they had a lot of guys. Dale touched on this that, Ryan, were not household names when they came to Tennessee. Tim McGee was probably, the biggest name when they got him. I think they got him out of Cleveland, the receiver. Tony Robinson was a pretty highly recruited player, but he's from Tallahassee, and Florida State was sort of lukewarm on him. Keith Davis from Nashville was a highly rated player, but gosh, he got hurt, and they ended up playing at running back Jeff Powell, who's a track guy. He was on the track team, and I can still remember Frank Broyles was doing color back then for ABC with Keith Jackson, and he broke off that long 60-yard there, really to sort of all but seal that game and looked like a vapor trail down the left sideline. And I can still hear Frank Broyles saying, "Keith, he wasn't even on the roster to start the season. He was on the track team." And that sort of epitomized, Dale had gone to JUCO, I think, before he came to Tennessee. You had just a lot of guys that, and he said it best, played better than they were. Chris White, had played just sparingly. And then Charles Davis gets hurt. White steps in, has an All-American season with 10 receptions. There was story after story after story like that on that team. And I think that's why to this day, fans, you talk to fans, certainly my age and, 45, 50 and older, and that remains one of the most beloved Tennessee football teams in history.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that's the one I always hear behind 98. And I think, to me, just doing some research on it this week, and some of it I already knew, but this change shows how much college football has changed. But for Tony Robinson to get hurt in the Alabama game, and for the team to go on and still do what it did, like that just feels unfathomable now. For to lose their starting quarterback who's been good. Obviously, he's on Sports Illustrated earlier in the season after the Auburn game, or cover Sports Illustrated. That's the stuff that you don't see as much anymore, which again is a testament to how the sport has changed. But that's also the type of thing that makes a team special and makes a team that people will remember for a long, long time.
Yeah, Daryl Dickey, and I should have mentioned his name. Doug Dickey's son steps in at quarterback. He'd thrown very few passes, and Dale mentioned this. The next week Army had a beat, Georgia Tech had a beat there in Neyland Stadium, and I think they were down 6-3 or 9-6 or something. They got the ball back late game. I mean, Neyland Stadium, it was emptying out. People had given up. I heard stories about people walk through the parking lot there and people with their radios on saying Tennessee's lined up to kick a field goal. But somehow, some way, they got in position, and Carlos Reves kicked one from like 51 yards to tie the game. Back then, there was no OT. You had tie, and that tied. They were able to tie Georgia Tech, and from that point on, and even in that game, Tennessee's defense was outstanding, but they just took off, and it was just one of those seasons where everything fit together. And as I said, the first time in almost 50 years that the Tennessee team had won an SEC title, and then follow that up with a bowl win. And it's no doubt that team laid the foundation for what was to follow. Later in the 80s, they went back-to-back SEC titles, 89 and 90, and then, of course, the national championship and the first SEC championship game win in 1997, Peyton's last year. So, again, thanks to Dale Jones. And for those fans, remember, there'll be a lot of those guys on campus this Friday and Saturday as Tennessee celebrates the 40th anniversary of that 1985, the Sugar Vols, as they were dubbed, that 1985 SEC championship team, as well as the 90 SEC championship team, all will be a part of that celebration. Well, let's turn looking forward now to the game. A familiar face, which almost is surreal to me to think this is going to happen, but leading the Arkansas football program, Bobby Petrino. Imagine how much money you could have won 10 years ago if you go to Atlantic City and said, hey, I want to lay some cash down that 10 years from now, Bobby Petrino is going to be back as head football coach, albeit as an interim coach at Arkansas. But they'll be on the sideline with headsets going up against Tennessee. They had an off week. Tennessee had an off week. Tennessee opens run as a 13.5-point favorite. This is one of those games where I think Tennessee will score big points because Arkansas, quite frankly, hadn't been able to stop anybody this year.
No, they haven't. And I mean, I'd been of the opinion they'd give Sam Pittman until the end of the year, but that Notre Dame game, you give up 6 touchdowns on 6 drives in the first half. That changes some things, and I think it's a weird with the unknown of the new defensive staff, and not that I expect it to be some 180, but can there just be any life in that defense this week? It almost, and I'm sure we'll talk about Florida a little bit later, but it almost feels to me a little bit like Florida, where that's what I've been telling people. Like, their defense is good. Their offense can just be okay. They're going to be fine. And I don't know if Arkansas's offense is quite as good as Florida's defense, but Arkansas's offense is good. And if the Hogs can get just competent defensive play, they'll be capable of being competitive in this one. And, it's hard to not feel good about Tennessee at home, especially against someone other than Georgia. They've been so solid under Josh Heupel, but I think it's 69.5. I think it's the over-under. It feels like it could have the feel of a 2010s Big 12 game with these two offenses.
Yeah, and these teams last year, was it 1914? Is that right?
1914, yep.
Here's just a hunch that there are a lot more points scored in this one than last year. Taylor Green to me is the X factor. He did not play well against Notre Dame. He played really well up to that point. And he is a load, man. He can run it. He can throw it. He's gotten better his second year, but there's a stat there, second-year starters under Petrino. Of course, Lamar Jackson was one of those. Always end up having big years. He did not play well. And I know in talking to Bobby last week, that's one of the things that he feels like his confidence was derailed a little bit by the fact that the defense was so bad. And when you're a quarterback, Ryan, and your defense is giving up touchdowns every possession, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to score and match touchdown for touchdowns. That's not a good way to play. I think Bobby feels like Taylor will play better. He is a guy certainly that will test your defense and your back end down the field.
No doubt. He had a lot of boomer bust last year. Like, he had some really, really nice moments a season ago, and you said it, through the first 4 games of the season, it was consistency. He was the guy that you saw in his best moments and was playing about as well as any quarterback in the SEC. Obviously, some of those top guys had struggled. I would expect him to bounce back. And certainly, Tennessee's secondary has not been fantastic to this point in the season, outside of Colton Hood. But, an area, kind of going back to our conversation to start, an area where Tennessee, I don't know if they were better than I expected, but you had to see guys step up in the pass rush. They've gotten that. Tyree West has been fantastic. Josh Josephs, who had a great year last year, but wasn't super consistent getting after the passer, has been really good. Caleb Herring, hasn't always been great against the run at time in some of those run fits, but has certainly been good coming off the edge. Can Tennessee's defensive line control this game? In a game that Arkansas is probably, you would think if Tennessee starts fast, as they often do offensively, Arkansas is playing from behind and throwing a lot. I think that's where I point to. I think Tennessee's secondary without Jermon McCoy, it's kind of just is what it is. It's not great. It's not terrible. I think it's the pass rush that can really dictate the terms of this game and make life difficult on Taylor Green and on Petrino as a play caller.
Yeah, they got to finish. Got to finish well when they get back there on Taylor. They got to finish the play. He is so good at breakdown football and making things happen on the run. He looks like a basketball small forward. He's long. He's got these long strides, man. When he gets in the open field, he's hard to catch. So I think 2 things: finishing when they get back there, and not letting him escape. And number two, tackling well and containing the edge. You got to tackle well in the open field. He's a tough guy. He's 6'6", but he's also about 235 pounds. So being able to tackle well and get him on the ground in the open field will be big. And just not letting Arkansas run the ball at all. You don't want any of their running backs to get any kind of consistency to where they're running the football. If he's going to run some and you're going to have him running for his life, all right, that's okay. You can live with that. Again, as long as you get him on the ground and don't let him turn, where you've got him sacked, you turn that into 25, 30, 35-yard gains. But I think tackling well in space and finishing when they get back there are two things. And I think I would add a third, not letting the run game from the running backs, never letting them get that established at all.
Yeah, and those things tie together too. Tennessee can stop the run on early downs and force Arkansas into third and long. They're going to have a lot more success with that pass rush and be able to pin their ears back. And you're right, Green, not that he just torched him on the ground a year ago, but he had some big plays and big moments where he got out of situations and Tennessee wasn't able to bring him down. And I just think that's curious too with, Tennessee has struggled a good bit to this point in the season running zone coverage. They've, even with Ty Redmond, who they certainly adjusted after Georgia. They didn't leave him on an island as much against Mississippi State. They've been a better man defense team. If you're going to do that, if you're going to play a lot of man-to-man coverage, you're either going to have to spy them or you're going to have really good composure and really good discipline rushing the passer to not open up those big scrambles. So those are the big things. And again, it's, you have some leeway. It's not like last year. It's not like Tennessee's defense is going to have to be perfect in this game. They don't have to hold Arkansas to 13 to win. But you need to make them earn it. You need to make it not be easy. And I think, to your point, that's especially where if you can cut off the tap in the run game and make Arkansas beat you through the air consistently through 4 quarters, I think as good as Taylor Green is and as solid as his passing offense has been, Tennessee will be set up for success.
Well, you know what's going to happen now. It's going to be a 14-10 game.
Yeah.
He's set up that way. It's like the guy that goes to the free throw line shoot 92%, 1-1, and he breaks the first one. So we're going to get like a 14 to 11 or 14 to 10 game.
And, even that's Mississippi State game. We were saying it's going to be high scoring, and it was to a degree, but 2 defensive touchdowns for Tennessee, turnovers that set up short fields. Both those defenses in that game played better than I expected, at least the Mississippi State one, and certainly better than the final stat sheet said.
Yeah, when you go on the road, man, think about that, how critical those 2 defensive touchdowns were. If they don't get one of them, they lose. Certainly 2 of them. So, when you go on the road in this league and maybe you don't play a football on all the sides of the offensive or defensive side of the ball, you got to make something happen either in the kicking game, get a non-offensive touchdown or 2 in that case. And that's one of those things when you look at this team's sort of their makeup to this point, they've been able to do that. So I want to ask you, as we go into October, always injuries are always right there at the top. Can you stay healthy? Tennessee's not been a very healthy team to this point. Certainly you want to keep your quarterback healthy. But how do you feel right about the leadership on this football team? Because this is where we start to find out what teams are made of, what their leadership, the core of that team is about as you get into October and November. You start having these 4 and 5 game grinds in the SEC, and you do get beat up a little bit mentally and physically. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you see in Tennessee's leadership as they go forward?
I think what I really like is on the defensive end. You always want your better players, at least, if not your best players, to be those leaders. And I think Arian Carter and Josh Josephs are about as strong as leaders as you could expect, and 2 of, if not the 2 best guys on that Tennessee defense. So I like that a lot. I think Aguilar, leadership necessarily looks different, but just the way he can lead from the front. And as Josh Heupel said, has complimented him on many, many times. Doesn't matter if it's a 75-yard touchdown, if it's 4th quarter interception like he threw at Mississippi State, he's just steady. And I think that's what they need. I think they missed that a lot last year, and you've seen that in both these SEC games where Tennessee's offense has gone in lulls in 3rd quarter, 2nd quarter against Georgia. And a year ago when they went in those lulls, they just could not get out of them. And they have been able to do that in both their SEC games this year. And I think that speaks to Aguilar. I think Miles Kitselman's a good leader in that room too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious who on the offensive line, there's been so many new faces there. What that looks like as guys continue to play good football and get more and more comfortable with one another. But I feel like Tennessee's in a good spot there. But you're right. I always laugh at that when we talk about leadership in July, or in basketball's case, it's kind of a question for Tennessee basketball this year. Talking about the leadership, it's all great in the offseason. No team's got bad leadership in the offseason. These are the stretches you're going to figure out some things about your leadership and about those top guys in the room.
Yeah, after you lose a game, after
Yep.
you lose a key player, one side of the ball is getting beaten up in the media and by fans. Who are the guys that inside that locker room are the guys that set the tone when it gets real, and it's getting ready to get real. And which, hey, as I look around at the league, I don't know about you, I can't figure it out. Just when I think, well, I have an idea that in tier 1 and then this team and this team and this team in tier 2, it changes, and I think we're going to see that for the rest of the year. I looked down the list this weekend, Ryan. Ole Miss is playing out of conference. They play at home against Washington State. Ole Miss a 33-point favorite. Alabama on the road, Missouri. I think a really intriguing game. I was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for that Vandy game, and that's a game that much, much closer than that final score indicates. If Pavia can hold on to football and they just get field goals on their 2 trips inside the red zone, that's anybody's game. Bama a 4-point favorite on the road against Missouri, an unbeaten Missouri team who's probably had, well, I know probably to it, they've had the most manageable schedule in the league to this point. All their games at home, so they get Bama at home. If you haven't had a chance to see Ahmad Hardy play for Missouri, the transfer from ULM, the running back, he to me has been the best transfer in college football. He's dynamic, and he's made a huge difference in their running game. That's another one of those games, though. As you look at it, Missouri's unbeaten, Bama's lost once, not albeit out of conference. That's going to shape the league. Arkansas, Tennessee a 13.5-point favorite. We talked about that. Florida Gators, and you knew they had one in them. They just had played too good and too hard on defense this year to come out completely empty-handed. And once again, I mean, say what you will about Billy Napier. A year ago, he did not lose that locker room, and they came back. Clearly, he hasn't lost it yet this year. As they come back and they beat Texas, just a must-win for him and that program. They're at home, and the defense played lights out. Again, everybody that plays them, and I still am not a huge believer in what they're doing on offense. Lagway's talented enough where he's going to make some plays and do some things well. But when you go in to play the Gators the rest of the year, you better strap it on when you're going against their defense because they're pretty good. But Florida goes on the road this week, Ryan, at A&M. And A&M, another team that probably none of us, me included, have talked enough about this year. Ag is an 8-point favorite over Florida. And, that was a close game, Mississippi State and Texas A&M for a while. And A&M just sort of blew it open there at the end of the game. And they're a tough physical team. And I know that having been around Mike Elko for years, they really embody what he's about. South Carolina goes on the road. The Gamecocks off this past weekend, as was LSU. LSU a 9-point favorite. Now, LSU is a little bit of an enigma to me because I felt coming in with Nussmeier coming back, they'd gone and added some big-time players in the portal on offense, 2 receivers in particular, that they would be much more potent offensively. And I knew the defense would be better because they spent a ton of money on that side of the ball, and they have been better, but they can't score. And I had heard the week of the Clemson game that Nussmeier had done something to his ab. I didn't know how serious it was. He'd strained it or there was some issue with his ab. LSU played it off, which most schools are going to when you're quarterback. Well, clearly he's having issues. When anybody that's a quarterback and you're trying to throw the football and you got an ab issue, that's difficult. And you watch him throw and you watch how ineffective they've been in the past game. It's not all of him, but that to me is the LSU South Carolina game is interesting because LSU just hasn't proven they score a lot of points. 2 more, Georgia, Auburn. Georgia goes to the Plains against an Auburn team that desperately needs to hold serve now at home. They've got 2 straight games at home. They've not been able to protect Jackson Arnold at all. They had difficulty scoring. But much like Florida, Auburn defensively is legit. Georgia, a 4-point favorite. That's a game I think that goes into the fourth quarter. I think that's anybody's game with 4 or 5 minutes to play. I just got to have that feeling. And then the final one, there in the State Fair in Dallas, Texas, and Oklahoma. Brent Venables saying that he does not expect John Mateer to play in this game, Ryan. Texas, a 3-point favorite over the Sooners. So of those games, which one or two are most intriguing to you?
Yeah, I think, it starts there at the State Fair in Texas, just because of how, it felt like Texas loses the opener to Ohio State, and then there's the build up to their SEC opener. And for them to just have so many of the issues that plagued them against Ohio State, plagued them again. I think Arch Manning played better, but they couldn't run the football. And now in Oklahoma, to me, it's a team that you just wonder about. Obviously, there's a ton of hype around them early, as there should have been. But you see Michigan. I don't know how good Michigan is. Struggled with Wisconsin yesterday. Auburn, that win in a game that they got some very, very favorable calls at home, doesn't look as impressive when you watch A&M bash Auburn really the next week. So that's one. Can Oklahoma actually win that game with Hawkins playing in a backup? I think to your point, Missouri, I feel like I don't know less about a team in the league at this point than Missouri, just because of how their schedule's been. Alabama coming off, an emotional win against Georgia, a less emotional win, but certainly a lot of hoopla around the Vanderbilt game this week, and how losing that game a season ago, Vanderbilt talking it up, college game day in town. Can they avoid a letdown spot and find consistency? And I think that's the thing that I would just say with DeBoer in general. They've had the ability to win big games. Can they be consistent week in, week out? So that's the question that Alabama has to answer for me. So those are two I'm really interested in, just from the game itself. The one thing, looking at the lines earlier today, I was surprised that A&M Florida line was as big as it was. I just think when you play defense as well as Florida does, if you're not throwing 5 interceptions, if you're not gaining 32 yards of offense in a half, you can just keep games pretty close, pretty easily. So that was the line that surprised me a little bit. And I think, not that I think Florida's going to win that game on the road, but I think that one's going to be closer than people expect. And it'll be a good barometer to see how much of what Florida did offensively this past week against Texas, and a good Texas defense was a fluke, and how much of it was them making some legit strides. Because as I said earlier, they don't even have to be great on offense; they just have to be competent. And with that defense, they'll be in a lot of games.
Yeah. And I'm sure you predicted back in August that we'd have, 4 unbeaten teams in the league at this point, maybe 4 or 5, and that not included in that group would be Texas, Georgia, Alabama, or LSU.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All those teams with a loss. How about this? The 3 of the top 4 AP preseason teams, whatever preseason polls are worth, I think every year we see not worth a whole lot, but Texas was 1. Penn State was 2. Clemson was 4. All 3 of those teams, as we go into week 7, Ryan, unranked. So college football is a different animal than it was 10 years ago, different than it was 5 years ago. I mean, I'm sitting there in Alabama at Tuscaloosa on Saturday, and I'm looking around, and there's all these national outlets there to cover Vanderbilt on the road. I mean, the Athletics there, Sports Illustrated there's ESPN's there, Yahoo's there. I mean, we were there on 3. So you had all these, and who would have thought that 5-6 years ago? So NIL and the portal have leveled the playing field. And you see a team like Missouri. You mentioned Missouri. Missouri's right tackle, their right guard, their quarterback, their running back, their leading tackler, Trotter, their leading sack guy are all first-year transfers, every one of them. And that's, look at what Ole Miss did last year in the portal, the way they built that defense, one of the best defenses in college football. So that's, you've got to be able to hit it right. And it's not always getting the highest rated guys, but guys that fit. Tennessee's a great example of that at corner. What happens if they don't get McCoy last year and Colton Hood this year? Colton Hood, they got, after spring?
Yep.
I mean, so think about that defense each of the last 2 years without those two guys that they got in the portal.
Yeah, you're right. And Colton Hood obviously gets completely looked over because of the quarterback situation. But I mean, they are absolutely up a wall if they don't have Colton Hood on this football team right now. And obviously you get more bad luck with the Gibson injury, but I think that's the perfect example though of you just can't sustain the depth that you could sustain in the past. And even when you have returned 2 starting corners, one of them an all SEC guy, you go out and get a good player in the portal who's been, probably played at at least a second or third team all conference level, and you're still thin. You have a couple injuries and you're still not in a great spot there. So, I mean, you and Bob have said it on here multiple times. It's just a week to week league at this point. It feels like the NFL. It's you talked about it a minute ago, going through the pecking order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's hard to do, and it's extremely difficult to do. And it feels like almost 1 to 10. There's very, very little difference, and it's certainly Alabama outgained Vanderbilt, and they got the late touchdown. So score looks a little misleading yesterday, but Vanderbilt in the fourth quarter is right in that game, on the road, having turned the ball over twice in the red zone. One of them third down play, they're going to have to kick the field goal anyway. The other one, they could have still scored a touchdown. So I think that more than anything, in a game that it didn't feel like Alabama played terrible by any means, speaks to just how competitive this league is. And if you think it's an off week by looking at the schedule, there's a good chance that there's going to be some really good games and some games that maybe go the way you don't expect them to.
And I saw a friend of mine who's a scout with the Dolphins in the press box yesterday, and he said and he recruits or scouts most of the Southeast footprint. And he said this is the closest he's ever seen it in the SEC to being NFL-esque and true parity, that if you don't play well, you're not healthy 1 week, then you're probably going to get beat, or certainly, very likely to get beat. And I think that is the case. I'll make a prediction. And I know Bob and I have talked about this on the air. I know we have off. I think after the SEC championship game this year, so play all the way through the SEC title game, there won't be more than one team with fewer than 2 losses in the league. I'm talking overall now, not just conference losses.
Yeah.
But overall losses. And maybe everybody with at least 2 losses. But I'd say there'll be one at most in the league, of the 16 teams in the league, that has fewer than 1 loss. And again, we maybe we're looking at, now I don't know if that's good for the league, Ryan. I don't know if that's good for the league as far as the playoff selection time. I would hope that if you're playing a schedule that most of the schools in the league are playing, and we're not going to have to deal with this as much starting next year, because there won't be the imbalance within the league the way we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Missouri. Really, I thought Tennessee's schedule was pretty manageable when you looked at it. I don't think as much as Missouri, but certainly easier than Florida's, or easier than Arkansas's or Oklahoma's. I mean, look at South Carolina's next 5 games. I mean, good grief. So I think the fact we go to 9 next year and you have to play a marquee non-conference game helps even that up a little bit. I don't think we go down this road of, Texas schedule, for instance. If you look at their schedule last year and this year in the league, much easier than Oklahoma's. Not even close. And I'm glad to see the league getting away from that. But this year, I don't have any real strong feelings about how it's going to shake out, man, because I just don't see, and maybe this is more a credit to the parity in the league, I don't see a dominant no-brainer of a team in the SEC this year.
Not at all. And we're at the point now you'd say maybe Oregon, maybe Ohio State, maybe Miami, but there's not many just nationally that I feel confident saying that in. So it's a completely different beast. I'm completely with you on the number of losses for teams in the conference post-SEC championship. And you were saying that the one thing that stood out to me, it's going to be, I'm not sure they needed too much more of it, but it's going to be good motivation for Greg Sankey and the folks in the league office to want to get this playoff to 16 teams, because it's going to be some tough decisions, and we'll see how it all unfolds. But it's hard not to see some teams getting left out that feel like they have that there's not a very big gap between the team that got in and the team that got left out, I should say.
Well, that's it. That does it for tonight. And boy, we want to thank Dale Jones for joining us, former Tennessee 2-time all SEC player. I think if you ranked, I don't know, if you ranked the top 5 plays in Tennessee football history, I think his batted pass and interception there at Legion Field in 1985 would be among the top 5. I think most Tennessee fans would rank that one right there in the top 5. He joined the RTI Lowdown this tonight. Ryan, we certainly appreciate you filling in for a show that we're proud of, and we certainly hope this thing, you tell your friends, subscribe and link there on the RTI Rocky Top Insider page. And you can find us wherever you find any of your podcasts, the YouTube page, there, the Rocky Top Insider YouTube page. We do it every Sunday night, and we look forward to many and more of these as we go forward. Ryan, I guess you'll be back on the call there in Neyland Stadium on Saturday. I'm headed out to Oregon for the Oregon-Indiana game, that new football powerhouse, the Indiana Hoosiers game day. Who would have thought 5-6 years ago game day would be at Indiana and Oregon, or Vandy and Alabama in back-to-back weeks? So that tells you all you need to know about college football now and how much it's changed. But we appreciate you, Ryan, seriously, for sitting in tonight. You keep up the great work there on Rocky Top Insider, and we'll see everybody next Sunday right here on the RTI Lowdown.